Thank you very much, Yuli Novak, who is our next speaker. Yuli was meant to be with us here in South Africa, but as a result of the war, schedules were thrown out and she couldn't make it here, which is why she speaks to us over Zoom from Israel. So last night, many of you attended a movie about groups of incredibly courageous and dedicated Israelis and Palestinians, but there are very few in Israel to match Yuli for sheer courage under fire. So from 2012 to 2017, she was the executive director of Breaking the Silence, an organization that documents the experiences of soldiers in the occupied territory, somewhat in the spirit of the End Conscription campaign that you will remember from South Africa. And since 2023, she's led B'Tselem, the Israeli Information Center for Human Rights in the Occupied Territories, which is one of the most respected Jerusalem groups documenting human rights violations in the occupied territory. And tomorrow, her organization will release a really major report on what's happening in Gaza, but that is perhaps still under embargo. I believe that her topic today will deal with what can Jews of diaspora do. And I'm going to hand back to Anton to run the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and a very warm and appreciative welcome to you, Yuli. Let's go straight into it. Please speak, and after that we will take questions from the floor, both here and in Cape Town. The floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you all, and shalom. Let me first apologize for not being there. I apologize to you, but also to myself. I wish I could have a few moments of the South African air to help me to breathe during this time. So as I was said, I'm Yuli Novak, and for the past 2 years, I've been leading B'Tselem. B'Tselem is an Israeli human rights organization, combined of Israelis and Palestinians who work together to document and to analyze human rights violations committed against Palestinians. The organization is working since the first Intifada, so more than 35 years. It's really difficult to know where to begin these days. I assume that you already know the facts, or at least enough facts. You've all seen the footage from Gaza, maybe in horror, maybe in disbelief. Some of you may have visited Israel during the past 2 years and felt the shifting air around here, the tension and the fear that is everywhere around. So I won't try to update you. You, like the rest of the world, are very much are not in any way uninformed about what's going on. Instead, I thought to talk about what isn't always said. Not what's happening in terms of bombs and statistics and starved children, but what's allowing all of this to happen. And now how we, Israelis and Jews, are responding or failing to respond to it, and perhaps what we can learn from those who walked the similar paths in the past. I want to speak to you, and I was very honored to be asked to speak to you in this event, not only as a Jewish Israeli, but also as someone who holds South Africa very, very close to her heart. My most important lessons about justice and power and blindness and fear are things that I learned in South Africa. And today I want to revisit 3 of those lessons. But first, we do need to acknowledge a few facts about the present. So Very shortly, because again, I assume you know and probably talked about those things in the past few days. In Gaza now, as we speak, over 2 million people are enduring unspeakable devastation, not only from bombs, but from deliberate starvation, the collapse of hospitals, the erasures of schools, of any civil or cultural institution. The damage is not just physical, it's emotional, societal, and human. In the West Bank, the violence might be smaller in scale, but the underlying mechanism is the same. Armed settlers, backed by state forces and sometimes combined with state forces, are driving Palestinians from their homes, sometimes at gunpoint. Entire communities live under constant threat with no protection. Practices like air bombing of civilian areas and mass displacement of people already took place in the north part of the West Bank. And these are practices that we see how they spill over from Gaza into the West Bank. In the southern city of Jenin, in the northern city of Jenin, Jenin refugee camps, 40,000 people were driven out of their homes for a few months now, and it doesn't seem like they're going to come back. Israel is reshaping the city. Also inside Israel, the climate is one of fear and repression for those who are there to speak, and certainly for those who dare to speak out in Arabic. We're living under the rule of the most extreme government in Israel's history. And that government told us precisely what it is planning to do days after Hamas attack on October 7. They attack civilians in Gaza, starve them, and crush the strip until it becomes uninhabitable for Palestinians. After they said that, they sent the Israeli army to do exactly that. And while this is taking place, the majority of Israelis are either participating, supporting, or turning a blind eye to whatever takes place. So how did we get here? Let me go back to those 3 lessons I talked about, 3 truths I learned from South Africa that helped me see my own country more clearly. The first lesson is about separation. Separation can feel natural. That's how it sustains itself. In South Africa, you lived under a system that trained people to believe that living apart was normal, even moral. In Israel, we've done the same. The entire system, military, civil, educational, is designed to keep Palestinians and Jews apart. It tells us that we are fundamentally different, that living together is naive at best and dangerous at worst. And that's not a new thing. That's something that we all learned since the first days of our lives. This separation is physical. It is being created by walls, by checkpoints, by permits, but is also deeply embedded into our minds and souls. It allows Jewish Israelis to live lives of near total detachment from the reality next door. Most Israeli, for years, didn't see the checkpoints, the demolitions, the arrests, all those practices. And when separation becomes so deeply rooted, it enables things that are even more dangerous: fear and dehumanization. When a society stops seeing the people on the other side of the wall as people, the unimaginable become possible. My second lesson is on blindness. Living under an oppressive regime, and specifically an apartheid regime, often come with a background story. A story, a narrative that justifies the regime and its conduct, sometimes even in the minds of those who suffer under it. In Israel, our story revolves around security, around an ever-existing existential threat. We were told that we're a democracy, actually the only democracy in the Middle East. Even as millions of people are living under our control without rights. We were told that the army is the most moral army in the world, even as it operates inhumanely and with near total impunity. This is not just propaganda. It's a kind of blindness that goes deep into the mental perception of the people of this land. It's the belief that you can maintain military control over people for decades and that violence will somehow stay contained. It's the refusal to see what it means to build society around hierarchy, to believe truly that we can be safe while others among us and around us live under oppression, that we can be relatively safe while others are stripped, completely stripped of justice, and stay human while others are stripped of their humanity. Blindness is not a passive thing. It is taught, it is nurtured, and it is embraced by well-meaning people because it allows them to look away, or maybe more correctly, to look through unbearable things. My third lesson after separation and blindness has to do with fear. And I want to say something about the moment that probably was one of the most influential moments of our lives, all of us, I can assume that, and that is October 7th. October 7th was a terrifying day. There's no other way to say it. The attack, the Hamas attack, and other organizations was brutal, it was traumatic, and for many, it was the first time we experienced a sincere feeling of existential threat. I know that because for me, it was the most scary day in my life. And what October 7th did was to trigger something old and ancient in Jewish Israelis' perception. Some ancient fear about how we'll move on from that. Now, I'm completely condemned what happened on October 7th. It was an attack directed towards civilians. But in order to understand where we got to now, I think we also need to look at what it did, what October 7th did to the Israeli public. And in that sense, fear can become a weapon, and that's exactly what has happened. Our government took that fear and used it to justify a campaign not against Hamas, but against an entire people of the Gaza Strip, and maybe the entire Palestinian people. What was declared as self-defense became a distraction, and what was called an existential war became revenge, boundless, indiscriminate, and devastating. And in Israel, the fear remains and grows, feeding the blindness and turning into silence and obeyedness into complicity. I'll end with the question of what to do, which is probably the hardest question which I and my colleagues are asking ourselves each and every day. And I don't know, maybe you too ask yourself while you have these discussions there. Here's what I believe. And if you come from a place where injustice was enshrined in law and then undone by people who insisted of speaking out, then you already know my answer. My answer is you speak out and you do whatever in your power to stop it. Even when it's hard, maybe especially when it is hard and scary. South African, and especially Jewish South African, know what it means to confront power, even when that power wears the face of your own identity. You know what it means to reject silence. At B'Tselem, we witness, we document, and we speak out. And I hope you will too, because, and I'll end there, the question we're facing now is not a theoretical one. I think the main question we're dealing with is what it means to be human. And the answer these days should come in action. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask anyone with a question to please come forward. You've certainly given us a lot to think about, and ended on a most provocative point. So thank you for that. I don't have any indications here yet. Cape Town, do you have a question and want to go ahead? Cape Town, you look most mysterious in the picture. Do you have a question?
Yeah, my question, Yuli, I really thank you.
Sorry about that.
I thank you for your presentation. And the question I've got as a diaspora, a progressive Jew in South Africa and America, is what can progressive Jews do to help your struggle? And I felt you ask questions of a philosophical nature about separation, fear and blindness, and then speaking out. I'm part of a trade union movement in the 1980s in South Africa, where from knowing the trade union in 1975 at all, we had a national trade union in 1985, and we didn't just speak out. I was an educator, not an organizer. And I remember one of my friends who was an organizer in 79, the ANC said to him, trade union struggle won't work. Only underground military struggle will work. People don't seem to know that. And my friend who was a trade union leader said there's a role for trade union and what I call civil organization struggle, as well as armed struggle. And another group said to him, how can you go on strike and then negotiate wages? You're negotiating with capitalism. And he said, I'm going to negotiate with capitalism because it'll take us forward in the struggle. So when I think about what we can do as diaspora Jews, I don't reject JDI and increasing consciousness, but I think we're not in JDI asking practical questions. What kind of thing could we do? So I don't know how you can answer it. It might be even dangerous for you to answer me. But when I've thought about this in a kind of trade union, civil society struggle, we could get together with 200,000 progressive American Jews and 50,000 South African Jews and look at and target a boycott against the settlers in the West Bank. We could get their house ownership and get their names, and from their names we could get their passports, and we could block them traveling anywhere in the world with their passports. So we could have a passport boycott run by American mainly Jews and an economic boycott. So what I'm proposing, I think we need a boycott led by diaspora Jews. Would this help you?
Thank you. Thank you. Let's hear Yuli's answer.
Yeah. So first of all, let me say something in general. I am now here in Israel, and we're an Israeli-based organization, and all our team lives on this land, either inside Israel, in the West Bank, or in the Gaza Strip. So yes, under increasingly oppressive environment, we need to be very careful and to calculate every word we're saying, because we have a responsibility towards first and foremost, our ability to keep working. And you guys know a lot about organization that what can be done to organization that kind of stand in the face of oppressive regime, but also to keep our team safe. So yeah, so excuse me if I'm calculating my answer in that sense. I want to say two things. First, we have tools. Everybody have tools, and I don't think I need to tell you because you know by yourself. what we're seeing now is you talked about the settlers, which are in the West Bank, which are definitely a major part of the violence that takes place there. And I talked about it. The settler movement, or the hardliners, right-wing religious movement in Israel, which is led today by the political leadership of Smotrich and Ben-Gvir and others, are also working towards fulfilling their vision of settling Gaza. We hear that, they say it very openly, we don't need to guess anything. But our problem today are not the settlers, but the Israeli system. The vast majority of Palestinians were killed, the millions who are starved, the kids that are dying of hunger, the total devastation of the Gaza Strip, the fact that while we are sitting here and talk, there are bulldozers and D9, Israeli bulldozers and D9, some of them run by civilian companies, that are trying to ruin as much as left from Khan Yunis. So the problem and the violence don't start and doesn't end with the settlers. And that is something that I want to press here, that though we need to see the whole picture, but I think at this moment to say that the way forward is to mark the settlements in the West Bank as the problem, or the violent settlers as the problem, is really to miss the point. Because what we have here is a government that almost lost connection to reality. They are delusional, right? The whole world see photos and pictures and videos of children starved to death. And what they are saying, there is no starvation in Gaza. Now, it's not even something that you can really kind of argue with, because it is just really a regime that kind of got lost into their own heads. And I'll just say here that that is also something that I learned while studying about the apartheid regime in South Africa in certain moments, especially since the mid-80s, that it really becomes so much into the narrative of itself that it is totally disconnected. Unfortunately, our situation is much worse than it was there. And the last thing I want to say, you said about that I'm raising theoretical questions. I don't see them as theoretical at all. I think that in order to struggle and a system, we have to understand it. And the system is not only its leaders, it's not only its a mechanism of like violent mechanism like the army or the police, it's also the people. What we see today in Gaza happens with the support, the support and the cooperation, or at least the kind of denial of Israel society. There is a huge support for the fighting. And there is almost no discussion about the moral price of it. So in that sense, my theoretical questions are not for theoretical discussion. It's in order to understand where we are and to fully or being able to think deeply about this catastrophic moment and what we can do. There are no easy answers that I can tell you for sure. We got to a point where no one has a guidebook for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I have another question here. Come.
So it's actually, hi guys, Nathan. I was actually in Israel on the 7th. I arrived on the 5th to go do like a documentary with my cousin, and we were supposed to travel down and go into Egypt, into Sinai, and make a film. And then I ended up staying for 3 months afterwards, like helping out on farms and things that were abandoned. And it was an interesting experience, but when I realized kind of what was going on, I left. But anyway, the two questions, it's like a two-part question. The first one has to do with like, you know, we were speaking about Yuli. Thank you for your speech as well. Sorry, I didn't say that, but the first one is kind of ties into the idea of separation, and it's do we, and when I say we, I mean Jews both in Israel and part of the diaspora, do we still believe in the need for a Jewish state or a Jewish homeland that is solely for Jews only? Because that was a part of the creation of Israel, the reason for the creation of Israel. And it's, as far as I know, the only country, definitely the only democracy that has like religion or ethnicity as a precursor for statehood, as far as I know currently. I might be wrong. Please correct me if I am. Then the second question, which kind of goes on from that, is assuming that the two-state solution isn't an option anymore, because like realistically, we've been trying that for a long time and it's not working, right? So assuming that that isn't an option, with the annexure or the making both Gaza and the West Bank part of Israel inherently make Israel no longer a Jewish state, right? And then what implications does this have for Israel and the Jewish people?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So again, I want to go back to something you just asked, but put it as kind of an assumption that we all need to accept, and that is that there is no possibility for us to live together. And I don't accept this assumption. I don't know if that's what you meant, but I'll just say that this is a very it's something that is instilled in us. The idea that there is no way, we are essentially different, and it is also justified like and enhanced by reality, right? Here, say 80 years of almost 80 years, maybe more, of fighting. Of course we cannot live together, but that's exactly the lie, the complete lie. I don't think it's a naive thought that people who are very much alike can live together side by side equally. That's reality. That's what takes place all over the world. The delusional or the fantasy is that we cannot live together. Now, once you are in this process, it's very hard to step out of it. And I think in that sense, October 7th, which you were here, was a huge backlash. I'll tell you something about few days, I think maybe a day or two, maybe it was October 8th or 9th. I was 10 days after giving birth to my first child, an only child. So still lying in bed. October 7th erupted. And then a day or two after, I talked to a very, very, very close friend, South African, Jewish and South African, who told me, we were both crying, and she said, at least now Israelis will understand that you cannot go on like this, that you cannot keep hold this. What she meant was that you cannot keep hold this apartheid setting, this trying to demographically engineer the space, to use ethnic cleansing, to use military occupation. We just cannot keep going with that. And people will understand it now because it collapsed. The idea collapsed. And we can move forward. And I laughed, a very bitter laugh. And I said that I am afraid that what will happen will be exactly the opposite. And I was right. Instead of understanding that this structure, political structure that we are trying to live in since the establishment of Israel, right? The Jewish supremacy was there enshrined from the very first moment. And the ideas of ethnic cleansing was there from the very first moment. And the idea of how to demographically engineer the space was there from the first moment. So, and all these ideas, instead of, and violent military occupation, of course, and all these ideas and methods, instead of people see that it won't work, it won't last, this violence won't stay contained, like it never was in the history of human beings. Instead of that, what Israel is done with the very much, with the push, the strong and very direct push of our government, is just to deepen their kind of hold to those sentiments. And that's what we see in Gaza, that's what we see in the West Bank, but mostly in Gaza. So if you ask about the future, I have no idea about the future. I'll tell you. I think we are in a very extreme moment, and we haven't got rock bottom yet. I mean, I hope it will stop soon, but I am afraid and actually terrified by how things can very easily go even worse. And it might happen very fast. I mean, it's all kind of processes that takes place on the ground. So first of all, I don't know how we will get out of there of this moment, but I am sure, because there are almost 15 million people who live on this land, who are, in my eyes, all deserve just the same rights to live and to be free. And we'll have to find somehow a way to do it in the future without keep killing each other endlessly, and mostly killing by one side killing the other. And the question now is, when will it stop? And how can we kind of build something together for this future? But building is the next step. I think what we have to do now is completely reject the narrative of polarization. Polarization is one of the bases that allow things like mass killings and genocide and other terrible events throughout history to take place. Telling people and make them believe that the society is really, really like pushing them to the end. And I'll say last thing about what we do in B'Tselem, and that might give hope, because it does give me some hope. You know, we are working, Israelis and Palestinians, together. We are not trying to find the middle ground between the Israeli narrative and the Palestinian narrative, not at all. We're not about this coexistent thing. What we are trying to do is to look at things from the human perspective, from what it means to be human, and how do we protect humans of this land. And once you get into that head, what's been taking place in the last 2 years is not just about Palestinians. It's about ruining the very essence of society, of moral obligations, of normativity. And in that sense, once you kind of, and it's hard, you shift your perspective from the collective you are part of, in my case, the Israeli society, in your case, it's maybe Jewish diaspora, and just try to look from the point of view of the people, things become much clearer, and it's very clear that, of course, we can live together. There is not even a question in my view. But it will have to be done by fundamental change of the Israeli regime. I have no doubt in it.
Thank you. Thank you. I must admit, it's hard after the pictures we've seen of starvation to think how much lower one can go. And I'm fearful when you say we still can. Cape Town, I believe there's a question there.
Yes, there's a question. Am I?
Please go ahead.
There we go. I'm sitting here and I'm literally vibrating top to bottom, because this conversation for me is so incredibly triggering. Recently, I saw a social media post where some Israeli citizens were chased away from a cafe, restaurant. Seemed the person was speaking Spanish. I'm not entirely sure where it happened, but they flat out refused to serve them and asked them to leave. If part of the problem is the Israeli society that is supporting the regime or turning a blind eye to the regime, at what point do they think that the rest of the world is just going to sit by and allow them to have peace and freedom in the rest of the world when they don't allow peace and freedom inside of Israel? So to me, this is a ticking time bomb. We think we've seen anti-Semitism. You ain't seen nothing yet. The way that things are going now, it's putting every single Jew all over the world in danger. And so where does maybe civil society, do we need to start having signs outside of restaurants that say no Israelis allowed? Is this a thing that can be fixed person to person rather than government to government? Because clearly the governments are failing to stand up for what is necessary to be done. And so it's being left to the people, and the people, especially here in this country, understand and know apartheid deeply, which is why I am vibrating from top to bottom. So I don't see a solution that doesn't involve the ordinary person. But how that solution looks is inevitably going to be called anti-Semitism, even if it's anti-Israelism. So how do we bring that level of awareness? Because for me, the people who support the regime have to feel the discomfort before they'll change it. It was only
Thank you.
here in South Africa when we started having load shedding nonstop that people actually backed away and stopped voting for the ANC and started thinking about other alternatives. So at what point do we make the society uncomfortable enough to want to change the regime?
Thank you.
Okay, so let me say three things. The first, go back to Israelis and the Israeli sentiment and mentality. As I said, the fear is real. I don't think, or I'll say differently, I do believe that most Israelis are sure they are doing the right thing, and also maybe the only thing that can be done. The notion of self-defense is a very strong one. And the notion of this collective feeling of sincere feeling of existential threat is a very strong power. So in that sense, I think many Israelis are not unaware of what we are doing, but unaware of the deep meaning of what we are doing. And there is a difference. And many people through history who committed horrible, horrible crimes against other people were convinced that they are doing it because of self-defense, because they are obliged to, because there is no other chance, no other choice. So in that sense, Israelis are not that different. They're not, I don't see anything actually different in my society. The only thing is that we live through it to see how it happens. So that's the first. Second, about anti-Semitism in general, so you just said it, the Israeli government worked very hard, the Israeli regime worked very hard throughout the years to make this equivalence between Jewishness and the principles of the Israeli regime. Not even Israel, just the principles of Israel need to exist as a state in that uphold Jewish supremacy. They can say it in many words, but that's the essence of it since day one. And we all grew up in this. So yeah, we are in a kind of in a trap, right? I mean, I am also being called auto-anti-Semite. So I think the first thing we need to do is, and here I'm talking to the Jews in the room, is to oppose this identification. Say no, I mean, we can't be Jews, and we have tradition, we have history, we have national consciousness. It's all true. But the Israeli regime is not what we identify with. And so first of all, for ourselves. And now, how do you explain it further? It is a very complicated moment. And of course, racism is wrong in any form of it. And I didn't hear in the question anything like that, but I'm just putting it here. It is not only wrong, it is dangerous in any form. So that's the second thing. The third is what you asked about, what I would call the normal people. The people that are maybe they were involved, maybe not, maybe they were in the army, maybe not, but they are Israelis. And as such, how important, or is it important for them to realize through actions that are taken abroad? And here, I don't know, but I think you guys can answer this question much better than I do, because you experienced it. You experience what it means when the world is banning you in many ways, not allowing you to get to places, not willing to play sports with you, right? So you know how influential it was in your case. It wasn't the only thing who stopped apartheid, of course, but I think from everything I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think that it was an essential point in order to bring society into a point where it is pushed to let go of this political structure of apartheid. And in that sense, I think that we got to a point where Israelis need to get all the help they can, and I say it in the most gentle way I can, in order to understand that what Israel is doing now is not about protecting Israelis, and it's not about defending Israel. It's about ruining other people. And that is something that, I don't know, I don't want to live under this regime. And I think most people I know, once they understand it, they also, that's not a safe regime to live under.
Thank you. There's another question in Cape Town.
Yeah. Hello. Hi, Yuli.
Who are you?
There I am. Thank you for the big talk and a very, very incredible explanation of what the situation. My question is about the political landscape and not the coalition. And we know what's happening there, but there are a lot of protests, and that's going to bring hopefully some new political operators, and there are a lot of civil society organizations like yours. I know you're not involved in politics directly, but maybe you can talk a little bit about if there's any new players in the political landscape that could offer an alternative, and an alternative that organizations here in South Africa and other places can start connecting with, supporting, having a dialogue with, and also connect to other minorities that are not really represented, Palestinians, but the other minorities in the area that are very much outside the political conversation. So I don't know if you know or are willing to talk about that and see and give us some kind of an understanding of who we should talk to, how can we support, what kind of dialogue we can create between here and there with new operators
Thank
in
you.
the political land.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Owen. I'll try. So first, the situation now in Israel, and I think you're probably aware of it, the government is, as I see it, we have a very, like people who are really in control that are completely, like I said, messianic, hardliners, fascists, violent people who, like Smotrich and Ben Gvir and others, and Orit Struk and others, they are talking about one of them called it a time of miracle, right? So for them, the direction is very clear, and they're trying to push it, and they're very proud. And again, you probably heard it of their blocking. Just for example, they're blocking ceasefire and hostage deal in the past. So they want to keep fighting this forever war. Then you have Netanyahu, which I really don't know exactly what he has in mind, really. I think his political survivor is for sure playing a huge role in it. How much is part of this ideology, this right-wing ideology or not, I really don't know, but we see the action. So basically what happened here, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in South Africa it never happened, fully happened, is that the hardliners took control. You also had your hardliners, the really kind of crazy right-wing, super racist, violent people. But here they are sitting on the government. They are probably the most powerful, politically powerful people at the moment. I'm saying it because I will be very happy if they will step down and the best we can imagine right now, in being practically in the close time, in the seen future, is a right wing, not fascist, but a more liberal right wing government, right? I'm talking about people like Bennett, like Gantz, like, okay, they are right wing, no doubt. So, but if you ask me personally, as an Israeli, I would prefer them, just because the situation right now, and again, I'm sure you know, the state of Israel doesn't have a police anymore. The Israeli regime has a police that is run and controlled by Ben Gvir, right? So, and that is a huge shift from the last 2 years. By the way, started before October 7th. So with the in January 23, with the appoint of the current government. So this is the situation we're in. We're in inside Israel, in extremely oppressive and authoritarian reality. And I think that anything that can be done to stop it, or to at least slow it down, is important. Having said that, we do need to look on the opposition that we have today. And this opposition is fully support the Israeli policy in Gaza, fully. This opposition just last week supported the efforts to kick out Ayman Odeh from the Knesset, right? At least some of them. So I'm not saying we don't have any Knesset member that is genuine and is fighting. We do have, but the main political actors are all there. So in that sense, I working towards more militarism, more oppression, and more silencing, first and foremost of Palestinians, but also of anyone around here. So if I think politically, I think we need to work on those two levels. One is really to do whatever we can in order to somehow get this government down. We have an election, we're supposed to have an election more than a year from now. In the pace how things move, I have no idea how this place will look a year from now. So, but yeah, if there is a possibility to move them out, I'm not dealing with that on a daily basis. What I will deal with, and I think this need to work in parallel, is to touch the base of things, to go to the core of what's going on here. And what's going on here is not just one crazy government. It is one crazy government with 75 years of preparing the ground for it. They weren't chosen by chance. They were chosen because people were there voting for them. And in that sense, I think Israel is, what Israel is doing need to be stopped. And that's the most urgent thing. And then one day, I mean, Israelis will have to go through a process in order to understand that we can't live under this kind of regime, but that might take longer.
Thank you. Thank you. I have another question here.
Thank you so much for your courage in acting and in speaking out. You ended your talk by saying, what does it mean to be human? And the answer comes in action. My question is, what supports your courage in speaking out against our community? Because sometimes the most difficult thing is to break ranks with our own families and communities in the sense of speaking out for justice.
It's hard for me to answer because I mean, I personally always felt that way, that in the face of wrong, I felt like the urge to do something. But I think it becomes, again, in the last 2 years, it became even clearer that we are dealing with, I mean, I'm not doing it just out of kind of, I don't know, just for the sake of others. I live here. That's my home. And as I said before, I am not, I don't want to live, and I don't want my son to grow up under a regime that, under this lie, okay? Under a lie that he has to be an occupier, that he has to fight in order to keep us safe, that is essentially different from other people around us. No, I don't want it for myself. I don't want it for him, and I don't want it for any other child around here. I mean, and maybe that was always there, but I have to say the last 2 years working with, and that's the first time for me working so closely with Palestinians together. Our stuff is half and half. We don't count them. It just, that's how it happened to be. And during those 2 years, to get again and again into a situation where you say, no, it is unbelievable. It is just cannot be true that people are calling, and then a day after they're just calling to give testimony, and a day after they don't exist anymore. Or they're calling for help and you have nothing to help them. Or part of our staff members, one of our staff members, field research in Gaza, her brother and his daughter, 9 years old, were just a building collapsed on them. The building was bombed and collapsed on them, and they are still buried for months and months under the ruin. So, and that is the reality we live in. We hear about it every day. So it's not anymore about Palestinians and Israelis. It's about trying very hard to create this other perception and to bring into the discourse this other perception, the human perception. And yeah, it is difficult at this time. I can say something, maybe it's hopeful and maybe it can help you, that I do feel in a very small fraction of Israeli society a shift in the last few weeks. I think the hunger in Gaza and the photos that comes out of there, just as they shift and touched and kind of did something to people around the world, they also did something to people in Israel, to some of them. People who haven't lost any ability for empathy. And they are shocked, and they are trying to make sense of how come, how can it be? I don't know, but I think starvation is going to be one of the symbols of this time and this attack on Gaza. Again, the future will tell, but we do face with someone that people have a very hard, it kind of cracked something. And yeah, I'm not about blaming at the moment. I think justice need to be done, but that will be later on. At the moment, I'm only in the business of trying to push people to take action. And in that sense, if Israel might be able to understand it now, that's a good thing. If Jews around the world might be able to understand it now, that's a good thing. Again, the big and hard question is first to perceive it, but then to ask, what can I or we as a community can do about it?
Thank you very much. Let's take one last quick question, and let's keep both the question and answer quick.
Yeah.
From Cape Town. Cape Town, are you there?
We're not ready.
Are we ready or not?
No.
You don't have a question?
I do.
Please go ahead.
He says I'm not ready to. Can I go ahead? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Right, quickly. I say kudos to you, but I've got a question just for the sake of completeness. Both you and Dr. Liel have pointed to a large percentage of Israelis being ethno-nationalists or religious zealots or Jewish supremacists or apologists for the same. The rejoinder from the establishment is that there's a sizable percentage of people, and certainly leaders, on the other side of the divide who are either millenarians or jihadists, or who for one reason or another cannot abide the idea of an Israeli Jewish state. So the question is, what is your understanding or intuition or research findings about the percentage on the other side of the divide? We've got the situation, we're doing self-examination here, and it's a good thing, and your kind of self-examination particularly, but it does beg the question, what are the prospects of these two groups of hostile beings, the chance of them coming to some kind of reconciliation?
Thank you.
Okay, I'll try to keep it short. Again, I think we need, I understand the interest and the wanting to talk about the political future of this place. But I really believe that the political future of this place is being decided right now on the ground, first and foremost in Gaza, and then in the West Bank, and then inside Israel. So in that sense, there are things that cannot be justified. Even if there is a threat and there is a problem, there are things that are not part of your toolkit. And in that sense, I think once we are able to stop whatever takes place now, we're going to be in a new world that we don't know yet how it will look like. Of course, there are militant and I've talked about October 7. I mean, October 7 was a criminal act against civilians, at least most of it. That's not acceptable by any way. But again, I don't think we can look at the situation without like October 7 was the beginning of the story, because we have 75 years of occupation, of apartheid, of oppression, and in order to build a society that can live together, and again, I'm trying not to look at these both sides and people on the other side, but just the people. In order to give the people a space where they are safe and represented as the group they are, as the collective they are, and as whatever they want to be. The starting point has to be to stop this dehumanization and oppression and this mentality of militarism that is the base of everything here. Once you stop that, I think that is the moment where you can start thinking about who your partner is, who you want to create the future society with. But nowadays, what we have is an Israeli leadership who is doing exactly the opposite, and Palestinian leadership who is, let's say, gently not working towards that. So at the moment, I think the political leadership in the area is in a very, very problematic for us, not for them, place. And that's the first. And the second, that we have to recognize who is the perpetrator and the main aggressor here. And the main aggressor, by far, is the Israeli regime. And that is now the most dangerous element that operates within this area in regard to human life and human safety.
Yuli, we owe you a very big thank you for talking to us today.
I thank you. It's really crazy days, but and hectic.
Well, I want,
But it was good for me also to sit for a moment and to think what I want to address you. So thank you for that opportunity.
Well, let me say that on a day on which we're grappling with what we can or should do to be heard, and to try and stop what's happening, you are, your strength and your courage are inspiring.
Thank you.
Thank you.